Yeah, I guess.
Afternoon, everybody. I'll call the meeting back to order. A couple of things to do before we get into a presentation. We have some correspondence to receive. We have item 7.1 is the 2023 annual billing statement for Kawartha Lakes OPP. Tim Tatchell has sent this in to us. I have a motion to receive that correspondence. Deputy Mayor Richardson, Councillor Smeaton, all in favor, and that's received. We also have item 7.2, which is the 2023 proposed budget for Ganaraska Region Conservation Authority. Linda La Liberty, CAO Secretary Treasurer. It's also correspondence that's received on their budget. Can I have a motion to receive that? Councillor McDonald, seconder Councillor Ashmore, all in favor, and that's received. Moving on, item 8.1, Kawartha Lakes Police Service, 2023 budget presentation, Chief Mark Mitchell, and Chair of the Police Services Board, Ms. Wanda Percival. Whenever you're ready, Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon to the members of council, staff. I am pleased to be joined today by our new board chair, Wanda Percival, and I'm going to just give you a brief overview of our 2023 proposed budget, and between the two of us, we will endeavor to answer your questions as best as possible. Next slide, please. So what you see before you is our 2023 proposed budget at a snapshot. I'll just touch on a couple of items there, starting with the top line, grants and fees. You'll see a 17% increase, which is good news. That is largely due to an increase in the funding for our mental health and substance abuse partnership through our community response unit. Next, down to police administration. That is where I'll show in a minute that our capital is included in that part of our operating budget, and I'll speak to that in the next slide. Our largest line on there by far is police operations, 5 down there, I think. That is where all of our officer salaries, benefits, and some equipment costs are captured. So you can see that's the majority of the budget area. Next, at police training, you'll see roughly a 20% increase there. Our ability to have officers sent out for training was curtailed significantly during the pandemic. Although we've made a lot of strides in the past 12 months, we still need some investment to get back to where we want to be, so that is why the increase there. And the following line, police vehicles, you'll also see a significant increase there. That is almost entirely due to increased fuel costs. We were over budget for fuel in 2022, so that accounts for the increase in that line there. Looking next at court security, you'll see quite a significant increase in that line item, 200%. That is largely due to the fact that through attrition, we reduced our staffing at the court facility during the pandemic because courts were operating almost entirely virtually, and there were very few in-person appearances, either for the public or persons in custody. As we resume more normal court operations, we've had to bring our staffing back up to our historic level. So while that looks like a big difference, it's really just a return to our normal staffing level at the court. And I should also point out that our court security costs are offset in part by provincial funding. We receive about $500,000 a year to support those costs. And all of that adds up to almost a 4.5% increase overall. If I could go to the next slide, please. You can ignore the 5-year comparison at the top because I forgot to take it out. I've just extracted our 2023 capital budget costs. You can see on this slide at the bottom, we've applied $350,000 from our contingency reserve funding, and I'll speak to that a little bit further on the next slide. You'll also see a couple of projects. I'll just touch on a couple of them. ALPR stands for Automated License Plate Recognition System. That was part of the province's response to the elimination of VAL tags and equipping provincial police agencies with the funding to provide automated scanners so that we can recognize when license plates, driver's licenses, drivers who are suspended, that information can now be accessed immediately through new technology. You'll also see on that slide our vehicle replacement costs. That accounts for one fully marked police cruiser, one unmarked vehicle, as well as a community services trailer that we're budgeting for in 23. The generally rated expense, that is again a court security expense for additional change room facility. I can explain that a little bit further if required. But the one point I want to make with regards to that is we are hopeful and there's a good likelihood that those costs will be absorbed by the Ministry of the Attorney General. But we don't have confirmation for that, so we've included it in our budget here. Next slide, please. Just a few areas that I want to touch on. So as of August this year, our contingency reserve sat at $588,000. I don't believe there's been any significant change to that. We're not aware of whether we'll be in a surplus or deficit for end of 22, so those numbers haven't been updated yet. As I mentioned, we've applied $350,000 from that reserve to our 2023 budget. We could apply more, but we do have some significant capital projects in the coming years that will be related to population growth and meeting that demand, and it would be very beneficial to have a healthy contingency reserve to apply to those projects when that time comes. I also noted the increase in WSIB or provincial insurance costs. I would caution a little bit. That's a big number, 70% increase. Those numbers can fluctuate significantly from year to year in a smaller organization. But the general trend is that those costs in policing across the province are rising over the preceding 5 years. You'll see our Central East Correctional Center policing costs. We have 2 uniform members assigned to handle policing responsibilities at that institution. And in the absence of provincial funding that used to be provided, those costs are now absorbed on the municipal tax base. So we've generally rated those those policing costs. And the last thing I wanted to point out here is just the general trend, the increase in licensing fees, and the example, all police agencies in Ontario had to migrate to the same digital evidence management system, which made perfect sense, but there is a significant cost in licensing and operating fees that were associated to that transition. So that all of those things account for some of the increases that we saw. And the last, I just skipped over one of the significant, can we go back one slide, please? You'll see at the bottom on the area rated, we have a significant project in 2023 to replace our conducted energy weapons, which you're probably more familiar with the term of tasers. So that is a significant capital project. Our current equipment is at its end of life, and so we're looking to replace those. And we're also budgeting for enough replacement stock to accommodate future growth needs. And so we're hoping to recover some of those costs through the development charges reserves. Subject to any questions that you have, that's our 2023 proposed budget.
Thank you, Chief. I'll see if there's any questions.
Yes.
Councillor Joyce. I'll get you, Pat.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. Great presentation. Thank you. Can you elaborate on the WSIB? Is it more recognition and of PTSD? Is that where it's coming from?
I would say a significant portion of those costs are for PTSD-related absences. The province, a number of years ago, passed what's referred to as presumptive legislation, so that if somebody has an operational stress injury or PTSD-related injury, that is deemed to be work-related for our profession. And so, yes, with the awareness and we are seeing an increase in those costs.
Thank you. And if anything, that's a good thing that officers are, more awareness and recognizing that. Thank you.
Councillor Warren.
Yes, through you. Thank you, Chief, for coming today. This is a question I always have brought up in the past, and with costs increasing, are there any possible abilities to share some services with the OPP to bring down costs?
We do combine with the OPP on a number of initiatives in terms of some proactive activities, marine patrols, and that sort of things. We regularly benefit from the assistance of the OPP on a number of matters. Most recently, just last evening, on a search for an individual out east of town. So I would say that those partnerships exist already. I'm not sure that that they're going to reduce costs any further than they already are.
Just something to look, into going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. I just noted, I know that this year you're going to have changes to the 911 system, and I didn't see anywhere it was related in the budget. Could you speak to that, please?
Thank you. It's a great point. We're very fortunate that the city's corporate services department took on the budgeting requirement, because 911 obviously serves all citizens of Kawartha Lakes. So that was taken on under the corporate services budget. In a nutshell, 911 will change significantly in the coming years. It's the current technology is decades old. It's long overdue for an upgrade, and this is a national project. So all 911 centers across the country are migrating to the new platform, and the deadline for that is March 2025. And while that seems like a long way off, there's a tremendous amount of work that needs to be done. I'm happy to report, a little bit ahead of the curve in that regards, but there's still a lot of work that has to be done to complete that transition.
Thank you, and I point to it as another area of collaboration where you are working with other units, so great stuff.
Thank you.
Councillor Ashmore, you had a question?
Thank you. Through you to the Chief. Just one question on contracted services. It's a little over $500,000, or close to $500,000 now, and it was $360 a year ago. What exactly is that entail? Briefly, please.
Sorry, contracted services?
Contracted services. It's under your expenses. If you don't have it, that's fine. An answer, but I just was curious about what that was comprised of.
Are you looking on
page 124? Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
That's in the budget book, Chief.
My apologies. I'll have to get back to you on that. I'm not sure what that is offhand.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Chief, for coming today. Can I get a motion to receive the presentation? Councillor Perry, Councillor Yeo, all in favor? And that's passed.
Thank you very much.
Our next presentation is Halliburton Kawartha Pine Ridges Health Unit, Dr. Natalie Bocking. I believe Dr. Bocking is on Zoom. There she is. Welcome. Good to see you.
Good afternoon. Just checking you can hear me okay.
Yes. You can go ahead at any time. Thanks.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and members of council. My apologies for not being there in person. My household has been battling a series of daycare viruses, which I'm sure many of you don't envy at this point in time. So I do have a PowerPoint presentation with a couple of key points, just looking to see if that will come up on my screen as well as yours. There we go. Excellent. Thank you. And we can just advance to the next slide. I'll just provide a couple of background points for those councillors that are new to the council on what public health is, how it is framed and exists in Ontario, a bit about the health unit, and then of course our 2023 budget. So next slide, please. Many people lump public health in with our healthcare system, and certainly prior to the pandemic, I think in general, there was not a common understanding or good understanding of what exactly public health is and what public health units do. Certainly a global pandemic has helped to highlight our work and really force us into the spotlight, but there's still a tremendous amount of work that people are really unaware of what we do, as most of it is in the background. So really the difference between public health and our healthcare colleagues is that in healthcare, they look to treat, to cure individuals. Whereas in public health, we are focused on preventing illness, disease, promoting health and wellness, protecting against health hazards and infectious diseases, all at a population level. So yes, there's some individual work that happens, but all of that is at the interest really of promoting health at the community or population level. And these interventions certainly occur across the life course from prenatal to older adults and take into account a full spectrum of understanding of what causes poor health, in particular the social determinants of health. So next slide, please. We reference 5 core functions of what public health does. So communicable disease control, that's our pandemic-related work in terms of infectious diseases, outbreak management, vaccine preventable diseases, environmental health, health promotion, population health assessment and surveillance. So a lot of that's our data work, our respiratory dashboard, for example, and then emergency preparedness. Next slide, please. So public health is a function of provincial legislation. In Ontario, that is the Health Protection and Promotion Act. And so this piece of legislation essentially establishes boards of health and health units. It outlines what the minimum requirements are related to programs and services. It provides certain authorities to boards of health, medical officers of health, as well as to provincial level agents such as the Chief Medical Officer of Health. And so our public health system is, well, there's provincial oversight, local delivery through currently 34 local public health agencies that deliver mandated programs, but with local context under consideration. And funding is provincial and municipal cost shared. And if we move to the next slide, please. And it says very specifically in the Act itself how payment is made to fund boards of health, with payment by obligated municipalities. So City of Kawartha Lakes for our health unit being one of those obligated municipalities. And then the comments that the minister or the province may make grants for the purposes of this Act. So historically, there's been a variation of the amount of grants that the province has put towards public health. At one point in time, it was actually 100% funded through municipalities back in 1998. Then for many years, it was a 75-25 split, and then more recently moved to a 70-30 component, with 30% of our cost-shared budget being contributed by obligated municipalities. So next slide, please. So the health unit, and I'll skip through these next slides very quickly. If we move to the next slide, we're governed by a Board of Health. Board of Health is largely made up of municipal representation, two of which has 2 members from the City of Kawartha Lakes. We do have room for several provincial appointees. We have 4 vacant positions and continue to advocate with the province to fill those positions. So those are positions that are appointed and approved by the minister on the health unit Board of Health. And apologies, I'll just give it a minute for the slides to catch up. There we go. So we have approximately, this slide is good. We have approximately 185 employees across 3 different offices. We serve currently approximately 189,000 people across the counties of Haliburton and Northumberland, and then as well as the City of Kawartha Lakes. The population overall that the health unit serves is older than the average Ontario population. And we did see fairly significant expansion of the population, with actually the highest growth in Haliburton County and the lowest growth among Northumberland County. So next slide, please. We have a 5-year strategic plan in place. As you can imagine, this implementation of this plan stalled a little bit during the pandemic with our focus on other urgent priorities. However, the pandemic also facilitated movement in a number of our strategic objectives, especially when we look at opportunities for partnership and how we partnered with many different community organizations, as well as highlighting the role of public health in leading certain sectors and response to the pandemic. So while we might have lost a couple of years in deliberate implementation, I think we actually made great strides in the overall objectives of what this strategic plan has put out to achieve. And next slide, please. So as I mentioned before, our programs and services are actually outlined very specifically by the province, and this is within the Ontario Public Health Standards. There are additional protocols and guidelines that are put out provincially, which health units are obligated to follow. There is certainly room for us to tailor our programming to meet local needs, and we do that by collection of data, by working with various community organizations and individuals to ensure that we are adapting programs and services to meet the needs of our local community members. And we do work in partnership with many organizations, including municipalities, in both the design of our programs as well as the delivery. Next slide, please. So this slide really outlines the core programs that we offer as divided throughout the divisions of our organization. The middle 2 columns are really the bread and butter work that we do. There's very little overlap or duplication, I would say, of the programs that we offer at the health unit, and then those programs that are offered through whether it be primary care or hospitals. Again, as we tend to focus on either programming at a community level, population level, or also serving those individuals that might not have access to primary care or other health services as easily as other members of our communities. Next slide, please. These are just a few statistics from CKL in 2022. It does not include any of our statistics related to COVID-19, which still continues to dominate certainly our activity, but gives you a sense of some of the additional things behind the scenes that might not make the media every day. And next slide, please. So our budget for 2023 was approved by the Board of Health at our October meeting. A number of assumptions that we made in crafting this budget. We actually applied a 0% increase for our municipal contributions. We've assumed a 0% increase in provincial cost-shared funding. We have had verbal communication from the province related to ongoing mitigation funding. I'll speak more to that in just a minute, as well as verbal communication of ongoing funding to support COVID-19 response. So for the last 2-3 years, the province has been providing additional funding to directly fund COVID activities. Health units are expected to use their base budget first. So any of those services that were redeployed to respond to COVID-19, funding for that would have come out of our base budget. And then anything on top of that, the province has provided as additional one-time funding. And next slide, please. So apologies, I know this slide is quite busy as well as colorful, but this is a historical look just over the last 5 years of what the health unit budget has been, including all of the different funding sources for the health unit. The CKL contribution is the purple row. I tried to make the numbers there a little bit bigger. We'll give you a sense of how the contribution from CKL has grown. And at the top of each bar, you'll notice that in red, what the increase has been for the municipal levy. So going back to 2018, we were typically just applying inflationary increases. And then from 2020 onwards, we did increase the levy to our obligated municipalities. And that was directly in response to an announcement, an initiative provincially to transition from a 70-25 ratio to a 70-30 ratio. If that was applied without an increase to municipal contributions, this equated to a 1.2 million shortfall for the health unit budget in 2020. So we did increase the contributions of municipalities starting at that point in time over a series of a couple of years. So they were large increases, but not all at one time to reach that 70-30 ratio. You'll note most recently that the yellow bars are the additional COVID one-time funding that we have received from the province. Again, we've received no sustainable or long-term funding for ongoing COVID-19 response, and we're certainly hoping we'll get some indication from the province this year related to what this might be, as we know that COVID-19 is not going away and will require some sort of additional ongoing public health response. And next slide, please. So specific to CKL, I've listed here the total amount that CKL is contributing to our 2023 budget. As I mentioned before, this reflects a 0% increase to the levy. It also reflects an adjustment to the 2021 census data. So across the 3 municipal obligated municipalities, it is apportioned by population. And with the release of the 2021 census data, we reapportioned according to population size across the municipalities. It's also a reflection of our efforts to continue to find efficiencies and contain costs wherever we can. And we're looking forward in 2023, certainly to a year, hopefully, of stabilization. That yes, while we have ongoing response to the pandemic, a number of backlogs we're trying to catch up on and competing other public health urgencies. So I will stop there, and I'm certainly happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Bocking. You must have had a very good chair to be able to keep the costs that low.
We were quite lucky.
Councillor Joyce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Dr. Bocking, great presentation. I'm a big proponent of the One Health narrative, and just wondering if protocols, guidelines, funding from the province, do they encourage that? Do you embrace it, or is it kind of pushed to the side? I saw a little bit about environment and food safety there, but not a lot. So,
So it is I'm trying to remember if there's explicit reference to it in the standards. It's certainly a concept that is supported provincially and also through Public Health Ontario. There's additional work, I think, through collaboration in climate change that speaks a little bit to One Health and the concept of One Health. Locally, I think there's some understanding of it, but ongoing work to incorporate it throughout our programs.
Thank you. I hopefully we can encourage that more as we go down that path. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Richardson.
Thank you, and through more of a comment, thank you, Dr. Bocking and your team. One, for your leadership communication going through the pandemic, and number two, as we move into more of your core mandate and providing those prevention services, and for you to come to council today and at a 0% increase, we appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Bocking. I'll let you get back to your sick children, and we'll look for a motion to receive your presentation. Councillor McDonald, Councillor Perry, all in favor, and that's passed. Thank you, Natalie.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon.
Okay. Next up, we have Mr. Mark Marchowski with Mr. Jonathan Lucas presenting for the Kawartha Conservation Authority. Go ahead, Mark.
I go just get myself centered here. And I think I'm good here. So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to just thank you for the opportunity to present our budget submission and special project outlook for 2023. I'd just like to recognize a couple of members around the table as well. Congratulations as well on your elections. I think this is the first time I've been in front of you, so look forward to working with yourselves and with your municipality to improve our community. In any way that we can. I'd just like to recognize some of the recent board appointments as well to our board. So Deputy Mayor Richardson and Councillors Smeaton and Warren. Had an opportunity to meet with the board at an orientation session, and I think your members will be extremely productive for a board, and look forward to the year and working with them. You mentioned Jonathan Lucas. He is our acting director of corporate services, so he has a big hand in the budget and the preparation of it. So thanks for inviting him as well. Given that we're probably one of the first CAs, maybe the first CA to do a budget presentation, there's some new faces around the table. Thought I might do a little bit of an introduction to who CAs are. CAs short form for Conservation Authorities. And so we are one of 36 conservation authorities in Ontario. We follow watershed boundaries. And watershed boundaries, what they are heights of land that are connected together, so they all drain to a common outlet. And so, for instance, if you take Pigeon Lake, for instance, all the water that drains into Pigeon Lake would be called a watershed. We're part of the Kawartha watershed, which pulls in the west side of the Kawartha Lake. So Balsam, Cameron, Sturgeon, Scugog and Pigeon. So there's and we do cut off a little bit in our watershed. There is some administrative elements that also form the legislative boundary for what our watershed is. In terms of our mandate, which is defined in the Conservation Authorities Act, so we do have an act that we follow that specifies what we do. The purpose of a conservation authority is to organize and deliver programs, benefit to the community, so programs and services that further the conservation, restoration, development, and management of natural resources in watersheds in Ontario. So within our watersheds of interest, we manage programs to ultimately make a better world for everyone. So the protection of natural resources or the management or conservation of resources benefits all of us. And so we do recognize that our boundary crosses municipal boundaries because it is the kind of hills around that form our watershed. So City of Kawartha Lakes has 4 different conservation authorities, and that is common amongst municipalities in Ontario. Moving on to the next slide, we have our budget process. Our budget is in the early stages of development. And we did receive a guideline from our board to look at a 3.75% increase in our operating levy. And that was, there was some recognition as well that the outgoing board wanted to make sure the incoming board had a hand in the formulation of our budget. So we are looking forward to starting up and having our board meeting so that we can move through the budget process. At this point in time, we are looking at April for a 30-day circulation period to our municipalities. And this is identified in the Conservation Authorities Act in terms of the process to be followed, and that is followed by a weighted budget vote, which is where the budget actually is approved, and that will occur in May if our board is in line with what we're seeing as some timelines. The next slide just identifies, for instance, the 3.75% increase, our budget amount that works out to $62,000. And there is a formula that is applied relative to the current value assessment of properties and the relative geography that a municipality has in a particular conservation authority area, or vice versa, depending on how you look at it. So in this case, there has been higher current value assessments in other municipalities in our watershed. So the relative rate is 3.42 versus the 3.75. We have also looked at our special projects, and that is looking at, instead of a 3.75% increase, we're looking at a 2% increase, so it balances out to about 3 at the end of the day. Our budget does comprise of multiple kind of discrete units, and of course this will change next year. It'll be a different framework as outlined in some of the recent legislation that has come through. But at this point in time, this is kind of the transition year where we have the existing structure. So we have an operating levy, and that operating levy is shared amongst all watershed municipalities. That really supports our core programming. And in this case, all the programming that we have outside of projects that are more specific to municipalities or more specific in terms of initiatives. The other two components, or three components, there's project levies. So there's the general benefiting projects levy. Those are projects that are shared amongst all watershed municipalities and are seen as a benefit to all watershed municipalities. The special project levy are geared towards a cost sharing amongst multiple municipalities, but maybe not all watershed municipalities that form a CA. So we have 6 different municipalities, or 4, depending on how you slice it. Oops. And we have 1 or 2 programs that one municipality funds, or in one case a joint endeavor amongst municipalities. An example of that would be our lake management plans and the implementation of those. And service agreements are the last component of our budget. Service agreements are those that are typically held within departmental budgets and not necessarily part of the levy, but certainly form part of our budget. An example of that would be risk management official services that we have an agreement with the City of Kawartha Lakes on. And that ties into source water protection and responsibilities. These are all supported by grants that we receive. We always are active in seeking out ways to make the dollar go further. Our pressures for this year, there are some legislative pressures. We'll see some of those come through for next year as well, in terms of some of the requirements that the province has outlined for conservation authorities as a whole. And some other aspects that influence our budget is whether we can get grants for the work that we do, and certainly inflation, economy, and of course the labor market are big driving factors as well. This is the outlook for the budget as we have it prepared, and of course, as I mentioned, this is early on, so this is drafted per the guidance from the previous board and kind of how it shakes out in the end. So we are looking at this point in time an increase in the operating levy primarily. That's the 33,904 that you see there. Overall increase is 42,000. There's some small, as I mentioned before, small increases to the project side of things. And I'll talk about some of these as we go through, just to familiarize yourselves with some of the projects that we're doing. The general benefiting, these are the ones that are shared amongst all municipalities and agreed by our board to be beneficial. So we have a digitization of records going on. We've scanned 3,000 records to date with this program, and I can't tell you how beneficial that's been during the pandemic, but certainly as we play out to how our services are organized and making sure that we have a customer service delivery and meeting our customer demands well, is getting access to information no matter where we are, whether it's in the field or working remotely or in the office. Having these records digitized is extremely beneficial and efficient. The board did approve an environmental monitoring strategy last year. So we took a look at our monitoring. These are things that, for instance, are related to flood forecasting, looking at environmental health, and some programs around some provincial monitoring programs. These are all identified as mandatory programs. And so we're looking at trying to increase the relevance of those programs, and especially in the face of climate change. So we have, for instance, one real-time gauge, and that's what we use to get real-time information across the watershed, which is pretty tough, especially when you look at rainstorms that are getting much more smaller in geographic area, but dump a lot of rain. And those were the ones that, for instance, created the Peterborough floods. We do have one item that's dropped off, and I'll explain a couple highlights a little bit later on that one. The special levy, special project levy requests, these are the projects that are individual to a municipality, or there might be one or more municipalities doing that. So the dominant one is really Lake Management Plan implementation. And there is a joint rural stewardship program. It's really planting trees, with the $50 million tree program being the flagship in there. And we represent a little bit separately just for administrative purposes. It makes it a little bit easier to report on. But it was a component originally within the Lake Management Plan Action Plan, and that was a 5-year plan approved by the previous council. We are looking at a refresh on that action plan moving forward. The other item in there is the Lake Dalrymple Management Plan. So all the other lakes, there's been investment in trying to figure out what the focus should be for those lakes, and this is the last one that we're doing. And the Lake Dalrymple, what we have is an advisory committee that looks at this program and looking at the different pressures and looking at management options for doing that. We see these lakes and these plans as everyone's plan, and with the ultimate goal of trying to improve our water quality. And these are pillars of our economy, tourism, and health as well. So this slide here identifies more specifically how the Lake Management Plan implementation is occurring. It does involve a whole suite of kind of individual programs that look at our different communities, shoreline, our urban areas, and rural communities, and then looks at ways in which the lake management plans may be able to affect those changes on a landowner basis, and different things that we can lead to try and make sure that the community is aware of, for instance, actions that occur on their properties that may be affecting lake quality. So there are a number of programs. There's sediment and erosion control aspects, and that's common amongst all different program areas. The shoreline program, there's an aquatic plant control project that we're involved in that was a recommendation in the plan. I'll explain a little bit more about that later. Of course, stewardship works across all 3 communities, and we have some interesting programs planned for the urban side of things in terms of some templates that may be able to be transferred easily to landowners for implementation. The Lake Dalrymple Management Plan, this is the 3rd year of implementation. So there's a 4th year. We have a 4-year cycle for these. So at this point, it'll be a continuation of that technical work, and we'll look at rolling up that information and providing a lake management plan in the last year, which is next year. And I'll just provide a couple of highlights. I'll run through these fairly quickly because I have maybe about 3 minutes left, I believe, for you. So there's a couple of programs that I just wanted to highlight. We are shifting our business practices currently. With the pandemic, there was a big shift. We're still adopting now to more of an in-person environment, and we do find that the remote works for a lot of people at the same time. So we're just trying to find the right blend. And that comes with kind of how we actually operate internally as well. But we've had some great successes, I think, on the kind of adaptation side of things. We've also looked at community connection. Last year, we started to look at different ways in which we can provide those opportunities for in-person again, because I think that's really important for our communities. Instead of doing the Zoom thing all the time, we find that people do like to come in and see us, meet a face, and work that way. But we also have a seasonal component that we see, and we find that it's more on their time. So we've tried to adapt our work and business to things that are self-directed or work better for our communities. There are a number of different initiatives that are going on as well in the Conservation Authority world. And I'll just highlight a couple of the business improvement sides of things. So we work as a collective of 36 conservation authorities and see some tremendous gains in what we're able to achieve. And over the last couple of years, and these are still being implemented, are a couple of big kind of organizational changes that we're going through in order to provide better customer service or better transparency and accountability. Some of these are laid out in the legislation and trying to achieve those in a coordinated way, but others are voluntary. So, for instance, our permitting and streamlining service with my Planning and Permitting Client Service and Streamlining Initiative. It's a mouthful. So what we did was we voluntarily looked at the standards that were being proposed. They were originally for high-growth CAs, and we adopted them early because we believe that reporting on our ability to meet guidelines is important, and they were actually reduced by 30% as well. So we're still in an adjustment period on that end, and you see here this is the result of those customer service standards. You can see towards the tail end we did have some resourcing challenges that we were presented with, but we look forward to increasing the ability to get better results on the permitting side of things. So a quick summary there is the green line is how we are able to ensure a complete application has been verified with the applicant, and the second is actually the light blue line is how we actually issue permits within those guidelines. And so, like I say, there's some fairly tight guidelines that we work within as a Conservation Authority collaborative to meet those. One exciting piece that we have is, and this was at one of those special general benefiting projects last year. This was the website design component, and a module within that is we've opened up our IMS, and IMS is short for Information Management System. It houses all our data. So what we did was we opened up a piece of that for applicants so that they can see what the status of their permit is. And so at this point in time, we've gone through the programming, and we've actually got a small test group testing it out to see how it works for everyone. So pretty exciting for us to be able to do that with a couple of screen captures there. In terms of one of our big kind of focuses internally is to make sure we're reporting on our data. So what we've done is we've explored a couple of new technologies to try and make sure that we have information accessible to everyone. And so you see a snapshot there of a Power BI platform that we're using to display one of our data sets. I did mention the environmental monitoring strategy as well, and Coles Notes, that is the slide that tells everything for you on the left-hand side. Really what we're looking at is increased investment, increased real time, so we can, instead of going out to the site and downloading the data, we can actually get it in the office at the time it's happening, which is a huge benefit. And of course, reporting and making sure, as you saw from the previous slide, open data is providing our data sets is important. I might have clicked twice. There you go. Well, the Coles notes on that one is we're doing lots of great work on the Lake Management Plan implementation front. So there's tremendous value in the community grants and landowner grants. We see great returns on investment, which you see there, and rolled up over 4 years. We've been able to work with landowners and award 79 projects to the tune of $123,000, and the leveraging on that is about $300,000. So tremendous leveraging. And that's where landowners are willing to invest in their properties and do some things that help sustainability. The next slide I'll just show here is a couple more projects. These are either demonstration projects or projects to improve shorelines. We have an agricultural and an urban component on these slides. And the last slide I'll just share with you is it's an interesting project here, which is the aquatic plant control. Some people call them weeds, so I did put that in brackets. Being environmental, we like to call them just abundant aquatic weeds. So we are a part of a collaborative. It's with Carleton University. They were successful in a grant of $500,000 to study these. We started this a couple years ago, and it's grown from there. The main intent of this is we heard through the lake management plan process that a lot of landowners were having trouble getting their boats out of their docks, and this bubblers or thrusters, as it may be called, aren't supported by the federal agency. So what we're trying to do through this project is fill the information gap essentially that exists. So that it may be, hopefully, be something that the Trent Severn Waterway would consider in the future. So with that, thank you very much for allowing me to be here, and be happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mark, for the presentation. Questions, comments? Seeing none. Mark, I know you're going through difficult times right now with all the changes, and we appreciate you coming and presenting your budget, and we'll see what transpires as we go forward. But, you know, we've had a good partnership and relationship with the Conservation Authority, and certainly hope whatever happens, we continue to have that relationship. So thanks for what you do.
Yep. Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. And like I say, I think we have a really great relationship as well. I look forward to continue doing that and supporting, really, we try and support municipality any way we can, and of course the community. So that's what we're about. And you will see more of me, no doubt, because we do have cost apportioning agreements to work out with the new legislative changes. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to receive that presentation, please? Councillor Smeaton, Deputy Mayor Richardson. All in favor? And that passes. Next up on Zoom, we have the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority. And with us today, we will have Mr. Rob Baldwin, Mr. Mark Critch, and Ms. Susan McKinnon. So welcome, folks.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a pleasure to be here to walk through the highlights of our 2023 budget. And first off, just on behalf of Chairman and our authority, congrats to all of you for forming this year's council in the city of Kawartha Lakes. And we look forward to continuing to work with you over this term. Mark did a fairly good job of explaining some of the conservation authority background and some of the other things, so allow me to be more efficient. So I was asked to call up the presentation, please. Okay, thank you. Next slide. As Mark gave a bit of the background on what conservation authorities are, the Lake Simcoe Conservation Authority was created in 1951. And we currently have 18 board members representing the 9 member municipalities. And certainly in the southern and western area of the Lake Simcoe watershed is one of the fastest growing areas in the province of Ontario currently. Next slide, please. Just for some context, the Lake Simcoe watershed is approximately 3,400 square kilometers with 20 municipalities, from the Oak Ridges Moraine in the north to the Oro Moraine, in the south, to the Merle Moraine in the north, and with 18 river systems that flow through it, and of course the Trent Severn system that flows through the heart of the city of Kawartha Lakes flows into the eastern part of Lake Simcoe. Next slide. As Mark touched on, and to your comments too, Mr. Mayor, it's certainly a lot going on. It's a lot of time of transition. So just to highlight where we're at, so I mean, there's a variety of bills that stem all the way back to Bill 108 through 109, 229, and currently Bill 23. And Bill 229 is sort of what is really sort of reframing some of the general rules of conservation authorities. And there's a lot of work to get to that point for January 1st, 2024. And that work is well in hand, and we've been meeting across all our municipal partners over the last 2 years, and we'll continue to do that this year. And so our focus on our 2023 budget was to keep it simple and work to get it through and allow us to really focus in on the changes required for 2024. And that will have a new format and a new look with the new requirements of the legislation. And we'll be before working with your senior staff over the next 6-7 months as we build towards a fall a timeline to present and talk about some of these new requirements and going forward. Next slide. And Bill 23 is certainly one that is top of mind, both for conservation authorities as well as for our municipal partners. On December 28th of last year, during the holidays, the province, they announced a new regulation, 59622, which imposed some limitations on the role of conservation authorities and their plan and development review. But what this does, why it limits us and our ability, then places that burden on to our municipal partners to assume some of those roles. And that process, we've been working very quickly to understand that and work with our partners to how do we transition, what do we do? We hosted a session with all our municipalities approximately 10 days ago with CAOs and senior staff to outline some of our thoughts and our approach to this transition. And for us, though, this does not have any material effect on our 2023 budget and levy, because the impacts that we may feel are in our fees and our staff that are supported through cost recovery. So there's no impact or draw on any of our levy or special capital budget requirements. The LSRCA is slightly different than the other CAs that you share in Kawartha Lakes. As the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan is a mandatory program, it was not one of the prescribed acts, and allows us to have increased responsibilities in certain areas around that on the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan, specifically around stormwater and groundwater and shorelines. So it does the changes of the Bill 23 are slightly less for our authority, while the changes for the other 35 CAs in the province of Ontario are basically the same. Next slide, please. So Transformation 2022 to 2024 is the title of our strategic plan. The title was chosen very optimistically and specifically, as this is certainly a significant time of transition. So we're in the middle year of this strategic plan, and it really was established to allow us to meet the changes in the transition requirements, so that as of 2024, when we come forward, we'll build a new strategic plan upon conclusion of all the changes that are required. Next slide. So I'm just going to walk through just a few highlights of our where we've been at the last year. So basically, just over 90% of the permits were issued in the accelerated customer service timelines, and for us, that's roughly 1,000 permits a year. There was 2 significant restoration projects within the city of Kawartha Lakes. And one of them was a large grassland and wetland and forest restoration project on a private property. And it's significant to note that the wetlands and woodlands of the watershed sequestered 20% out of the greenhouse gases in the watershed. So those natural heritage features are extremely valuable. Next slide. One of the things that Lake Simcoe is spends a lot of time is we are doing some of the leading research around phosphorus and nutrient cycling and the dynamics of how invasive species and nutrients interact in Lake Simcoe. The work is some of the leading edge work and is being used now to influence and assist in the management of the Great Lakes. Our in-house linologist, Dr. Ginn, is certainly become one of the leading experts in the Great Lakes Basin, and it's a work that I know will be of benefit into how to understand as well as some of the nutrient and the aquatic plant change that are occurring within the Kawartha Lakes. One of the unique things we've seen over the last roughly 15 or so years, all the work that's been done around restoration and policy implementation and working with our municipal partners, private landowners, as well as our development clients, is we've actually seen a 1% increase in natural heritage cover in the Lake Simcoe watershed, which equates to roughly 2,300 hectares. That's substantial in an age of significant growth pressure that we're able to accommodate the growth and still restore and actually increase natural heritage cover. We've been leading on training municipal staff on how to do advanced stormwater infrastructure inspection and maintenance to help them be in compliance and work to a more efficient way or to assist in anything requirements under your certificates of approval from the Ministry of the Environment. Next slide. We are in the process of trying to build a new nature center at our property at Scanlon's Creek in Bradford. It is our education facility. We are doing this, though, without any municipal ask. We are doing that through fundraising through our foundation and through a green community infrastructure grant. And this hopefully will begin construction, hopefully probably in next year. We're in the process of finalizing the grant agreements and getting the design done. And this will certainly allow us to increase our ability to do outreach to educate the community and to students. The demand and outreach for field trips to get kids back in nature after the last few years of the pandemic is beyond our expectations. We're solidly booked. We have no real space left to accommodate more. And that just shows that people really want to be back out into nature. And last year, we also saw the completion of a transfer of lands of approximately 900 acres, which we call the Lake Simcoe Conservation Preserve in the town of Georgina, and which represents probably the largest one-time land transfer to a conservation authority. And it's wetlands, agricultural land, and some forest. And our only cost in the transfer were our legal fees and the nominal $10 dollar amount for the actual transaction. Next slide. We've also been spending time with COVID and everything else has certainly changed the world we work in. Mark and his team did a procurement audit, which an external vendor came in and they looked to identify all the different savings and ways to cost share or reduce internal costs and overhead costs, which has certainly helped us reduce our overhead bottom line. We've been changing some of our internal process to a more advanced e-workflow to allow for the hybrid workforce, but also to allow for more efficient processing of our files and development reviews. And we're moving to work with our municipal partners on multi-year budgeting, which helps align to where you're going as well as ourselves. It helps build that dialogue over the term of council. Next slide. And also why this certainly has been a time also to how do we work with our people and talent. We signed, as our head office is located in Newmarket, we signed the York Region Inclusion Charter, and we are currently in the process of developing a diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging framework for our own office. We've certainly made a lot of technology and policy changes to support the hybrid workforce and allow for increased ability to use technology to do external meetings. And one of the things I always say is our biggest asset really is our people, but our second biggest asset is the data we own and manage and control. We are the data clearinghouse, data warehouse for the Lake Simcoe area, and we need to ensure that that data is protected as well as the privacy information that's contained within our records. Next slide. So moving into our budget, there's basically sort of three main areas. And one, of course, is to how do we respect the taxpayer? How do we implement and operate with our new strategic plan through this time period? And of course, we're trying to accommodate where we can to respect the funding envelopes and requests that our member municipalities ask us to do. Next slide, please. So over the last 5 years, you can see on the table or the graph on the left here shows the the operating and capital increases, generally lowering below 2%. While we have seen an increase in FTEs, they are not FTEs being added on the tax base or capital request. They are solely either supported from fees or from external grants through either our foundation or province or the federal government. Next slide. So our increase for this year is a 2% operating increase and a 1.66% capital increase. So this is the overall authority's operating and capital budget. So it's a move from just over 9 million to 9.17 million. Next slide, please. This table is just to give a context of where the city of Kawartha Lakes by levy sits within our watershed. As you can see, the region of York represents 65% of the levy and is by far our biggest funder and our biggest partner. And the Kawartha Lakes comes in at approximately $15,000. It is our smallest member under by levy. Next slide, please. So the specific ask for City of Kawartha Lakes for 2023 is it represents a just under $500 increase from 2022 to 2023. And that just reflects those 2% and 1.66% operating and capital increases. So it's a very minor and nominal increase from from last year to this year. And as we move forward into next year, we'll see there will be some dialogue around how that reflects in the changes in what is mandatory programs and non-mandatory programs. And next slide, please. And moving forward, as I mentioned, we'll continue to implement all the changes in this time of certainly dynamic change. It is as much for yourselves as it is for us. And I certainly echo Mark's comments that we're in this together, and we want to certainly assist you as best we can, as well as do these changes. We're working to finalize our asset management and financial strategy to make sure that we build the appropriate asset management reserves to protect the infrastructure and assets of the authority. Continuing on with our strategic plan. Of course, we, just like yourselves, we have new council, new board of directors. Our AGM is tomorrow morning, and we have orientation in February to work with. And with that, we have 7 of our 18 members are new this year, and we look to finalize the budget by hopefully by the end, no later than the end of March. And I'll be glad to take any questions. That's a brief overview of our budget ask and some of the highlights from last year.
Thank you. Good presentation, very comprehensive. Appreciate it very much. Do we have some questions or comments? You must have done a really good job. I see nothing here, so we'll let you off the hook, and thank you for your participation, and good luck in the year coming forward. And I think Councillor Yeo will look after you from the city's point of view. So if I get a motion to receive, Councillor Yeo, seconded by Councillor Joyce, all in favor, and that's passed. Thanks again.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
We're on a roll here with conservation authorities, so we now have the Otonabee Conservation Authority.
Yes.
Hello.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You are on a roll with the conservation authorities. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. I'm sorry that I'm not in person. My name is Jeanette Levy-Smith, and I'm the CAO here at Otonabee. Our board chair, Mr. Ryan Huntley, was also going to join us, but unfortunately was pulled away from his work. We're also happy to come back at any time and present. So I do have a slide deck as well. Wonderful. And next slide, please. And I'll keep on moving to the next slide. Thank you. So it does somehow help a bit to follow my colleagues in terms of the presentations. So a lot of things that they spoke about conservation authorities, the roles, some of the legislation changes that were happening. I'm not going to touch on them because they did an excellent job in terms of presenting the information. And we actually didn't coordinate. So this is good in terms of things. So for Otonabee Conservation, we have an 8 municipal board with 11 members, and obviously the same concepts with the other conservation authorities where it's representation by population. So we're really pleased to have Councillor Ashmore on our board. Next slide, please. This is our watershed and our responsibilities in terms of things. So we roughly serve over 100,000 people in our watershed and over 10,000 acres of conservation lands that we manage. Next slide, please. So a lot of the other conservation authorities also spoke about their strategic plan and their mission and vision. And so this is ours here at Otonabee. The previous board was supposed to go through an exercise of updating the strategic plan, but due to the pandemic, they just weren't able to get to that task. So that is something that this board will be looking at, is seeing if there needs to be any refresh, update, or transformations or transitions, as was referred to earlier, and incorporated into our new strategic plan. That we'll have for our organization. I can say that this mission and vision and our key goals still do form very much our work that we have today. So they still very much are relevant in terms of things. Next slide, please. So I'm just, again, take an opportunity to highlight some of our 2022 accomplishments. So it is all relative in terms of the scope and size of each conservation authority. But for us here, we are a small team. And so these are some of our statistics that we have been able to process and achieve through 2022. We also are part, I'll take an opportunity to highlight some of the things that Mark was referencing. We also are part of that collective planning and work. So when he was speaking about the IMS system, again, we here to have benefited from that, where the larger municipalities have taken on those leads, and we've partnered with them. We also are very proud of our environmental programs and stewardships that we have. So throughout 2022, we planted over 30,000 trees and shrubs in different places in our watershed. And we also have our climate change strategy. So this is year 2 really for us in terms of implementation for our strategy. And we really look forward to moving that forward and integrating into our performance objectives. I'm going to just highlight, we have 3 campgrounds this time. We have our Warsaw Conservation Authority, or Conservation Area Campground, which is more rural, more rustic camping. And we also have an agreement with the City of Peterborough for Beavermead Campground, which is right in the City of Peterborough. And then in 2023, we have taken on a new campground, Lakefield, which is in the township of Selwyn. And why this might be a bit important is that these revenue streams do actually help us to keep our tax levy low. It goes into our operating budget and helps to offset staffing costs and expenses into things. So next slide, please. So one of the things that we were also proud of in 2022 is we received over $1 million in federal DEV funding. Our capital plan just tripled by all of that great funding that we received. Part of that was some restoration work on the Jackson Creek Trail, but we also have, which we just completed and unveiled, but we also have 3 other projects where we are improving our infrastructure there, our privy washroom infrastructure, and we wouldn't be able to do that without our grant funding. The rest of the portion of the funding actually has come from the fundraising that we have been doing over the past 2 years. So the grant and the fundraising has made us successful in implementing these 4 large capital projects. Next slide, please. So again, my colleagues have touched on some of the accountability and some of the mandates that the province has given all conservation authorities. So here at Otonabee, we take that serious, and we look to integrate that and implement that through our performance objectives and also our reporting processes that we have. We too are part of the voluntary reporting processes where Mark was talking about. So we've taken on that. It hasn't been mandated yet, but it will be. But we wanted to, understand how to track and manage, but also understand our own efficiencies and where we needed to, where we could, spend some time improving that. So for 2023. Our overall budget represents a 2.4% increase, which is just a little over $30,000 for our budget. Next slide, please. And again, the word apportionment has been used. It is a bit of a new term that the province is putting out. The tax levy, really. And so for Kawartha Lakes, it represents an increase of about $201 from the past year for a total of $9,275. And the breakout between what the apportionment of the operating is and the apportionment of the capital is. Next slide, please. And so we did, the former board did have the budget presented in October. We did circulate our budget in October and also posted on our website. And then the board did look at that budget and approve the budget in just last week at our January board meeting. So our total of our operating budget is $3.2 million, and you can see the breakdown, but the full entire budget binder would have been circulated to the member municipalities and obviously the board, and it's on our website. Sure, it's probably easier to read in print there. And next slide, please. In order to help with keeping that the tax levy at a respectable increase, we've just proposed at staff a moderate, very modest, I should say, capital budget. This is also in recognition that we're going to be still working on our federal DOV projects. And so it's about a capacity, understanding the capacity of the organization and ensuring that we're not asking for funds that we know we won't be able to manage appropriately. Next slide, please. And this is the other, my other colleagues showed a similar chart. This is the member municipalities, the 8, and the breakdown of what they have in terms of the apportionment. Something that Rob spoke to a little bit was sort of some implementing, and Mark did, I should say as well. They spoke to some of the new formats and things that are being mandated to all conservation authorities. They need to be implemented into the 2024 budget. And so again, relative to our size, we staff felt that we wanted to take some on in terms of trying to implement some of them now as a bit of a pilot in this budget. And so moving forward, you're going to see those category 1, category 3s broken out in all of our budgets. It's part of the mandate that we have. So we still have some work to do on this, but we wanted to at least give it a try. So to see as a bit of a pilot for this budget. And the last slide I just had was today. So again, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. Would be very happy to come and speak in person. We do kick off our board orientation later today, when we are, and those are our sessions. Our governance and legislation session is today, and then we also have our annual general members meeting at 7 o'clock tonight. If you are interested in attending any of them, we're very happy to ensure that you get. We're doing it virtually for right now, but we're very happy if you want to attend, and I'd be pleased to make those arrangements for you. So those are all of my slide decks, and again, it does help when you do follow other colleagues and they touch on all those other key points. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have, Mr. Mayor and Council.
Thank you. I do have a couple of questions. Councillor Ashmore.
Thank you to you, Mr. Mayor, to Jeanette. Thanks for coming. And yes, I've enjoyed being on the board. It's the few meetings we've had. I've got another one tonight, or later this afternoon, I guess. What's really unique about this Conservation Authority I've seen is that they're actually raising money, and they're doing a lot of fundraising. This Lakefield campground, that's going to be a revenue generator, and they turn out quarterly financials as well. So I'm not sure if the other ones do that, but it's kind of unique there. So they seem to be pretty good. So thanks for your presentation.
Councillor Joyce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. I noticed, and this might be a question to our CAO, Ron Taylor, I'm not sure, and I also noticed this in the Ganaraska Conservation Authority, in the liability insurance is leaping by huge bounds. Is there something going on we need to know about in that area? Does anybody?
I can certainly start, but I'm sure
Sure.
Mr. Taylor will
Yeah.
also, or somebody else will
not-
jump in. So I do know, so my background has been in municipal sector as a CAO in a municipalities for many years. But I do know that insurance has really escalated over the past 2 years for everybody. And for conservation authorities, we are part of the same, I'm going to call it a bucket that the municipalities are in terms of things. So yes, it's right across the board for all conservation authorities, but all municipalities have also been hit, if not more than we have.
Okay, thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll just confirm. I absolutely agree with Jeanette sort of characterizing that when we get into the operating budget, it will be one area that we walk you through sort of broadly. Because again, whether it's claims, whether it's joint and several liability, whether it's new insurance that we're needing to expand on, like cybersecurity, things like that, all of these pressures combined, we're seeing double-digit increases in insurance lines year over year. Overall, I think there's probably been some good strategies that we've employed over the last few years to smooth that out a little bit, but certainly relative to size and who's delivering, they are seeing massive increases year over year. But we'll provide more information at the operating stage.
Thank you. I don't see any more questions. I think you did a really good job in telling us about yourself and your budget. I do thank you, and I wish you good luck going through the year, and I know it's going to be a year of change for you as well, and we are your partners in this, and we wish you well. Thanks for coming today.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council.
Next up, I need a motion to receive. Councillor Ashmore, Councillor McDonald, all in favor, and that's passed. Next up, we have the Healthcare Initiative, which is what we call doctor recruitment. And we have a well-known face to us, Miss Cindy Snyder. And we also have Barb van der Veen with us today. Welcome, and whenever you're ready.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, councillors. Yes, I'm Barb van der Veen. I'm the acting president for Kawartha Lakes Healthcare Initiative, and as His Honor mentioned, Cindy Snyder is sitting beside me, providing any additional support for any questions you may have. I guess I can do this myself. There we go. Sorry. So we believe it takes an entire community to recruit a family physician. So within our strategic plan, we have developed vision and mission. And so all City of Kawartha Lakes citizens have access to a local family doctor. That is critical in our vision. Our mission is to create a healthier community by recruiting, supporting, and retaining family doctors. So these are our core values. Excellence, we want to go above and beyond. Integrity, ethical and moral standards. Ingenuity, find solutions and improve and evolve. We want our heart to show, so we want to show that our passion will make a difference in what we're doing, and highlighting our partnerships, and together is better, in our opinion. So with excellence, we continue to be the local expert in physician recruitment. And integrity, we definitely want to maintain ethical and moral standards in all our communications. So with family doctors, potential recruits, medical learners, public counselors. And our ingenuity, again, with the expertise of our board members, we continue to think outside the box to establish creative solutions for the challenges that we face. And we all know what those challenges have been lately. And our heart, again, with each board member and our coordinator, we are all passionate about the work that we do, and we throw everything that we have into that passion. And our partnerships, we continue to nurture and strengthen those existing relationships with the City of Kawartha Lakes, Ross Memorial Hospital, Kawartha Lakes Kawartha Lakes Ontario Health Team, including a recently developed unattached patients working group. So these are our strategic objectives. I won't go through line by line, but they're to recruit, retain, partner, and to maintain accountability. So recruiting, the one thing that I would like to point out is the development of a family medicine residency program. Statistics show that when a family medicine, or when a resident of any kind comes into a community, they are 80% likely to remain in that community. So it's vitally important that we establish this program. And it's a multi-step approach. So what we've been doing is we have had clerks from the University of Toronto. So give you a little 101 on medical school and medical education. Medical school is generally 4 years. So first and second year are called just medical students. Third and fourth are clerks. Those are the ones who can go out and do a little more hands-on. The first couple of years for a medical student is very much focused in classrooms. They get very little clinical time. So again, we also want to encourage our local family doctors to participate as preceptors. So these are critical in ensuring that these medical students get the hands-on opportunity in a rural area, which is the key point. Being in a rural area, generally, as you can imagine, most doctors want to practice in a larger community. And I believe the last time there was any statistics that I know of, only about 8% of doctors will practice in a rural community. Presents a large challenge for anyone. So the other piece that we look at is retention. So we do a number of initiatives to help to retain our family doctors, including cards of appreciation, which seems rather simple and straightforward, but it's the little things that we have found that make a difference in showing the docs that we do care, we do appreciate the fact that they do go above and beyond. We also provide certificates for local restaurants, which does two things. It thanks the doctors, gets them out, and also supports our local restaurants. We recently interviewed family doctors in September of 2022. And this was to obtain feedback regarding their practice satisfaction. And this report is completed and will be circulated at the beginning of next week, so you'll have an opportunity to see it then. And of course, partnerships. It's important to create new partnerships and nurture the existing ones. What we were also in the middle of planning, or pardon me, beginning of planning, is to do educational events with partners, service clubs, the municipality, the citizens at large. Basically, there's a lot of opportunity for misinformation, and we recognize that, and it's important for us to get out, give our story, make sure that the correct information is being put out there, and to counter anything that is contrary to what the facts are. And so we are going to be developing that in the coming months. And we also believe it's important to be accountable. So we're accountable to you, to our funders, but also any of the community members out there, because we have been tasked with getting a vital service, which is family doctors for the city of Kawartha Lakes. And I'll give you those numbers in a minute. So I was talking about our medical students and family medicine residents. So again, those first and second year students are really green, very intelligent men and women, but they don't get a chance to get out too much. It's the clinical clerks that are in their third and fourth years that we have an opportunity to have into our community. Family medicine residents continue to their training, as normal as possible throughout the pandemic. So last year we had 16 family medicine residents here. Now, it wasn't part of their, what do they call it, their core? Part of their core, yeah. It's hard to explain. Yeah, it's hard to explain because you would think that a resident would come into a community for 1 year or 2 years, but for the ones that we've been able to attract, they come for maybe 2 months at a time. So it's enough to show them what's going on here, and Cindy does an excellent job of connecting with them and ensuring that they know some of the opportunities that are available to them when they're off duty, but it doesn't allow us a lot of opportunity to expose them to what we have in the community. But we do our best. And then we also had 14 medical students, which is a bit of a decrease again because of the pandemic, but we adapt as we can. And speaking of adapting, we have had to adapt as far as our meetings were concerned, and partly in a way to we've gone virtual. So all of our committee meetings and monthly board meetings and strategic planning meetings are all virtual. And at the beginning, you thought that maybe this wasn't such a good thing. But in some ways, because we've got a diverse group who are our board members, so we have some retired like me, and then others who are still working. So it allows those people to take that hour, an hour and a half out of their day. They don't have to drive anywhere, they can come and we can all be together and do the important work that we are doing. What has changed in the last year or so is we've gone back to in-person site visits with potential candidates. We do a residence weekend. Actually, we'll probably be doing 2 and maybe 3 in the coming year. And when we bring residents in, they come with their partners. We show them around the area. We show them the hospital and the clinical opportunities that are available. And they have an opportunity to ask questions, to speak to the doctors, because we get a number of them who volunteer to come and meet with them. And this provides a great opportunity to, again, showcase our community and probably clear up some misconceptions. When somebody hears Lindsay or Kawartha Lakes, they think, oh, well, that's so many miles away from Toronto. Well, it's only 90 minutes, and it's not that big a deal anymore. So we try to push that type of thing. And we also do recruitment events with medical schools, and Cindy's actually going on Saturday to University of Western Ontario. Yes. And for those who were on council previous, or those who have gone onto our website, you saw there was a virtual community tour that we developed back in 2021. Now, we recognize that the municipal landscape has changed a little bit, so we had interviews, obviously, with his former mayor, Andrew Latham. So we have to make a few adjustments, but basically it's a really good representation of our community for the people out there. So this is the part that hurts. So we have about 6,000 City of Kawartha Lakes citizens who have no family doctor at all. And then you add another 25,000 that we estimate who have a family doctor, but not within the City of Kawartha Lakes. So this is, again, goes against what our vision is that every member of the City of Kawartha Lakes has a family doctor within the City of Kawartha Lakes. So this slide tells you about the current recruitment needs, and I underscore the word current because these are the ones that are vacant right now, but we know that in the next year, we could be facing at least another 5 departures/retirements. So the bottom line is we need 19.5 full-time equivalent family physicians. And when you're talking about practices, in my former life, I was a manager of medical affairs at Waypoint Center for Mental Health Care, and I was doing all the recruiting for psychiatry there. And that has given me a lot of experience as to what's going on. And we know that in talking with family doctors, that it really takes 2.5 current graduates to replace 1 retiring family physician. So you've got the likes, well, I guess we could use a name. Dr. Petrosoniak, for example, has a practice of, say, 2,000, or you've got some other physician with a practice of 2,500 patients in the practice. And then when you've got this current group of physicians who generally, I think they consider a full practice to be 750 patients. So you can see that it takes a lot more doctors to replace current practices. And then you've got the added pressure, as I was reading in the paper just last week, with forecasting an increase in our population by 2050, up 35,000, was it? Yeah. So you can see that we've got some challenges coming forward, not the least of which is the ones that are up there right now. However, on the positive side, we did recruit 3 family doctors last year. So we recruited Dr. Luke Johnson to the North Family Health Team in August. We recruited Cindy, recruited Dr. Elizabeth Morrison to the Community Health Center in October, and then Dr. Nivi Navaratnam also joined the Community Health Center in November as a full-time doctor. So those are the positives. The realities are obviously up on this screen. So I'll just close with that piece to say we are in a critical situation that we haven't experienced since this board was created back in 2004. There is some hope on the horizon. Again, reading in the last little while, there is talk about easing the credentialing challenges between provinces. So we'll see how that goes. The Ontario government is also talking about initiating a program called Practice Readiness Program. So this would allow internationally trained physicians who are within the province right now to be supervised and assessed for their ability to practice. And I think they were talking, it was a 3-month program, 3 to 6 month program. They haven't initiated yet, but they are talking about it. So this would be good news for people who have highly trained from other parts of the world who can't yet get positions in Ontario. So this would really help ease in the short term. So our funding request, unfortunately, we've had to ask for a $10,000 a year increase. Now, this is the first time that we've ever asked for an increase in our operational dollars. And as everyone knows, it's due to increased costs for in-person versus virtual job fairs, which we've been doing more of, thank goodness. And it's also due to increased costs in general. But we do thank you so much for your ongoing support and your continued financial support in our program to recruit family doctors and retain them within the city of Kawartha Lakes. And this last little slide is, we're looking for someone who can stretch with the demands of this job. Are you flexible? And I would like to put it to you that yes, our board is very flexible, and Cindy especially. Cindy has 15 years of experience with our board as a physician recruiter, and she's actually known Canada-wide, actually, through the Canadian Association of Staff Physician Recruiters as an expert, and people look to her for guidance, suggestions, and whatnot. So we are really fortunate to continue to have Cindy with us, and so we also have a very diverse board who do have a lot of energy, who do have flexibility, who do have the passion to continue with this really important work. And that's it for me. Are there any questions?
Thank you very much. I think we may have one or two. Councillor Ashmore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, to Barb. Thanks for the presentation. You mentioned about physicians, how they want to stay in the large urban areas. Maybe, have you seen, hopefully there's a trend to go to rural areas, because doctors, like everybody else, they're getting tired of the traffic congestion and the crime and everything else that is attributed to a major city, and maybe they want to come out to a rural area or a smaller town, like smaller towns that we have here.
Yeah.
And if that was something that they would entertain in the future, or maybe that's the trend right now.
Well, obviously there's no statistical information on that, but I think it's fair to say that the pandemic has really shown people what their priorities are and where they can achieve that balance, because that's the other thing that physicians really want these days, is that work-life balance. And some people might think it's not working as hard as, say, my generation did. They're working just as hard, it's just in a different way. A family doctor in my day would have said, I want to stay and I want to do family practice and I'm going to be there in my office 80 hours a week. Well, and that's all they would do. So now they would do anesthetists and whatnot. Anyway, so what we do when we're trying to attract doctors who think that rural communities aren't maybe challenging enough is that there are opportunities for that diversity that they're looking for, and also that quality of life, because the city of Kawartha Lakes is an amazing place to live. I can say this for sure because we moved here 8.5 years ago, and we have loved it ever since. But it's got so much diversity, and if you really need to get down to the city, you can get down there relatively or easily, and then do what you need to do and then get back home. And so that's the thing we're really pushing.
Thanks. And finally, you mentioned about the doctors, the numbers, and they're black and white there. They show that, you know, a lot of patients are getting orphaned and of their doctor. One of the things that I've noticed is that a lot of doctors are leaving their practice and they're working at the hospital, or either they go here to Lindsay or Peterborough or Port Perry or wherever. Is that something that doctors, that you've talked to doctors and asked them why are they closing up their practice and orphaning, you know, 2,000 patients and going to the hospital? And I know the hospital here in Lindsay used to have physician's assistants, and they were great. I know there was at least one there, and a physician's assistant. Is that part of your initiative to attract those types of medical professionals?
Well, I'll speak specifically about physician assistants. Certainly, the mandate to which the city and our board have agreed is family physicians. We wouldn't be able to expand it to physician assistants. And just to give you a bit of an explanation of the difference between, say, a physician assistant and a nurse practitioner. A physician assistant is not autonomous, so they have to work in direct consultation, direct proximity to a family doctor or a doctor, whereas a nurse practitioner is someone who can be autonomous. They can prescribe, they can diagnose, they can order x-rays, certain tests. So as far as that goes, nurse practitioners would be a better bet, but it's still kind of outside our mandate. And Cindy.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Just to actually go back to the rural piece first, if I may, I find, and again, it's anecdotal, but most that want to practice rural have grown up rural, in a rural area. I can tell you I had lunch today before I came here with somebody from this area who wants to come back. And we have to work on licensing issues, et cetera, with her, simply because she's done all her training in Australia. So it's a multifaceted, makes it different than an Ontario graduate. And then in regards to, as Barb mentioned, physician assistants, nurse practitioners, all of that, the hospital itself is responsible for hiring any of that, and those go through their budgets. The same with, and physician assistants usually are more associated with a surgeon or someone like that, not so much in a family practice. And again, it would be up to the family health teams. Their budgets are the ones who locally hire the nurse practitioners or any of the allied health. That doesn't come through us in that respect. Not that if I meet somebody who has a nurse practitioner as a partner, I'm certainly on top of that, or anyone like that associated with them that way. But yeah, it really, as Barb says, our mandate to recruit the family doctors to the area. But once again, going back to what Barb said with our residence weekends, when we get them here, many times they've said, didn't realize you were this close to Toronto. They're used to the 401 corridor. My good friend and associate who recruits for Trenton and Quinte West is much more successful in the long run because she's on the 401 corridor. They associate that being closer. Once they get here and realize how close we are, then we do get to have better conversations with them. It's the getting them here.
Councillor Joyce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I just want to say, before I became a councillor, I've been on the KLHCI board for 5 years, and I have to say, I've very rare you see such a dedicated board of directors, really laser focused on their passion is unbelievable, and coordinator Cindy Snyder works hard and is very responsive to our needs. So I've always been very impressed with the work on the board. I'm happy to say I'm still with the board as a councillor. One of the things we identified as absolutely key in physician recruitment is the residency program. But we struggle there. Can you just expand upon that, just for the benefit of...
Take it? Sure. I'm only taking it because I've been involved that much longer with this than Barb.
That involves a collaboration with a medical school like the University of Toronto or Queen's, and we've been after them for how long?
I've been 15, probably 13 years at least that we've been trying to establish this. We just missed out at one point on the envelope of funding that the province gave to the medical schools to expand those programs and expand them out into rural areas, unfortunately. Our fingers are a little crossed. Queens is coming up with a new program and focus very much. They have 22, I believe, or 20 new seats starting September this year for medical students. They are focusing that strictly on family medicine. And it's going to be, all the training is going to be held at their Lakeridge site, where they do have a residency program. So we've already been in contact. They've already been in contact with us to, can you take some of these medical students, at least for learners? And we're saying, yes, but give us some residents to help with that. Let them train with us for a couple of years, out-of-year programs. So we're hoping we can negotiate something that way, that we can at least start building on it in that respect in the more coming future. But it is hard.
Thank you, Cindy. Just statistically, if we get residents training here for 2 years, you heard that, it's a 70 to 80% chance they stay. So that's key. And I just want to also expand on, we're building lots of new homes, more people moving in, but we have doctors retiring. If we're not in crisis with primary care, as we all know, is so important for our public health, it's a problem. And I know KHCI is working hard on it. And President Van der Veen, you said it in your opening statement, we need creative solutions. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, we do need creative solutions. And I also want to remind His Honor and the councillors that we are a volunteer board. And we work, as Dan says, we work very hard on your behalf and on everyone's behalf to bring family doctors and to maintain them. And you can look for more initiatives coming up, but we just continue to work very hard on everyone's behalf. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Smeaton, did you have a question? You're okay. Councillor Richardson, you're okay. Thank you very much for coming and presenting today. And yes, we've had a partnership over the years, and I think it's been very successful. I know that some folks say that the municipality should not be involved in healthcare, but I think all of the people who live in the city of Kawartha Lakes are our residents, and we have at least a moral obligation to try and make them as safe and healthy as possible. So I thank you as a volunteer board for all your work and all you do and all your successes, because you've had many, many successes. And just don't get discouraged. Please keep it up. We need you. Thank you.
We will be there for the long haul. Thank you.
Thank you. May I have a motion to receive the presentation? Councillor Joyce, Councillor Perry, all in favor? And that's passed. Is everyone okay, or did you want to take a break? We have 2 more presentations. For the day, we have 2 more. Did you want to stick it out, or did you want to take a short break? Keep it going? Okay. Our next presenters are the Lindsay Downtown Business Improvement Association. We have Mr. Steve Podolsky and Mr. Wes Found, and they will appear on Zoom.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, and members of council. Thank you very much for allowing us to present our budget today. As you're all aware, it's been a difficult time for our membership. Small businesses in our downtown and other downtowns across the city have been severely hurt by the ongoing pandemic, but also years of construction they have had to endure. While we understand the infrastructure upgrades and aesthetic improvements are necessary, it has nonetheless been disruptive to all, which I'm sure you can appreciate. With construction finally coming to an end this spring, I think we can all agree downtown looks fantastic. We are optimistic with the addition of thousands of new homes and residents. Small businesses will return to their former prosperity, and downtown Lindsay, with all of its upgrades, will flourish and be a downtown that we can all be proud of. On behalf of the BIA, Just a couple of thank yous. I'd like to thank City of Kawartha Lakes Public Works, Parks and Recreation, Economic Development, Bylaw Enforcement, and KLPS for their continued support of our organization throughout the year. Without their support and their resources, much of what we do would not be possible. I'd also like to thank the engineering department for working and communicating with us during all 4 difficult phases of construction. And finally, I'd like to thank our 2 former council representatives for their past support, and our new council representatives, Charles McDonald and Eric Smeaton, who we are looking forward to working with. I'll turn it over to Wes now, who can, give you an overview of our budget, and I believe you have it there up on your screen. Good, thank you.
There you go. Hi, all council members and Mr. Mayor. Our 2023 proposed budget, it is broken up between 4 categories. Previously, it was broken up between 3 categories, with the major one being administration. That housed all of the payroll requirements for all the different committees. We internally refined our financing model to include all of the payroll under their respective committees where they report to. We are asking for a small increase in the levy to accommodate some more marketing initiatives to help the downtown thrive. For that, we asked for a bit of an increase from $282.47 per 100K in assessed value to $364.46 per 100K assessed value, roughly about a $40,000 increase. And so it's split up between administrative, which houses all the executive director responsibilities, beautification, which is for downtown maintenance, flowers and trees, general expenses, marketing, which is for payroll, and then events and promotions. And then parking is mainly for our parking enforcement of downtown. Thank you.
That was short and sweet, thank you. Councillor McDonald, questions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to Steve for all the hard work, and I've been involved with the BIA for quite some time, and the downtown is very vibrant and looks beautiful, and it's because of all the hard work that the BIA does. There was a couple things in that the shortfall, which was in parking revenue. Could you just explain that?
Well, so just a brief overview of parking. As we all know, downtown Lindsay used to have parking meters. Back, I think around 2017, the meters were old and they were failing mechanically. I believe the city received a quote in the neighborhood of $350,000 at the time to replace them, and I guess that wasn't deemed feasible. And the original plan the city, I think, wanted to go with was with pay and display machines. We canvassed our membership and found that that wasn't the preferred method of parking control. So I believe it was at the time one of the council representatives who was with us on the BIA suggested that we make a deputation to possibly take over the parking, and that is how the initial pilot project came to be. So essentially, we work in conjunction with bylaw enforcement, but we enforce the parking and other community liaison issues, I would say, on our own with the support of bylaw. And if you remember, there was also a parking study done, and it confirmed that parking control should be maintained. When parking control goes away, for lack of a better term, it becomes chaos downtown. And the BIA is not interested in going after shoppers, diners, visitors. We are mostly focused on turnover, which is the most beneficial to our businesses, and we're focused on the abusers. So that's kind of our goal. And I think that we've done a really good job with it with the our liaison program. And I think that we've demonstrated that we can do it cheaper than if the city were to go out to a third party company, or quite frankly, bring it in-house to bylaw, where 2 bylaw officers have to go downtown and do that. And we all understand that bylaw has a lot on their plate, and they are supportive of us, but we also understand that parking isn't their only concern. So that's kind of why we're asking for an increase in the parking as well.
Yeah, through you again, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, just so everybody understands, if they don't understand, the money that the BIA gets from the levy does not cost the city any money. It comes from the businesses downtown. So the money that looks like that they're asking for is just for the parking that, which the BIA took over probably, I think it was 3 years, is it, Steve? 3 years ago?
I believe the parking started around 2018 was the initial pilot project.
Okay. Yeah, and it was supposed to be for a year, but it was determined that it was
right.
Definitely more efficient to leave it in the hands of the BIA. And another thing that's really important is that a lot of other people and other BIAs would love to do what we're doing, is take over their parking. Been in lots of meetings where they say, I can't believe you guys are doing this. That is fantastic. We're going to do the same thing because it really helps enforce the parking downtown. Every day, 5 days a week, not just whenever there's people around, and it keeps traffic flowing. And as we are all aware, with the amount of people coming into the city in the next year or so, parking is going to be a big issue downtown. So thanks again for your presentation today.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Councillor Joyce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. I love short and sweet, but your slide is, I'm afraid, just too busy and font's too small to comprehend it properly, just for future note. Thank you.
Oh, we apologize for that.
My apologies.
I can give you a copy if you like. Thank you, gentlemen, for your presentation. Oh, did you have more?
I just wanted to say also, and because I didn't elaborate earlier, that we've also asked for a slight increase in the beautification side of our budget, and that is due to the construction. We did meet with Director Shanks and shared our concerns. He didn't make any promises, by the way, but he was understanding of our concerns and our challenges. Just as a result of the construction, we now have more planters, more lamp standards, additional gardens that fall under our responsibility. So that's the reason for the increase ask there as well. So thank you.
Thank you for that. Anything else from anybody? Thank you, and thank you for what you do and parking and keeping Lindsay downtown looking vibrant and good. We'll try not to tear up the street anymore and let you have try and get back to normal business practices down there. Thanks for coming today.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thanks for your work.
Okay, thank you.
I have a motion to receive, please. Councillor Smeaton, Councillor McDonald. All in favor? Thank you. Our last presentation of the day is the Victoria Order of Nurses Canada, the Ontario branch, and presenting will be Ms. Jennifer Burton, and it will be by Zoom. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to the council. I'm presenting today on behalf of Sherry Comerford, our VON Nurse Practitioner Director. She sends her regrets today. I do have some slides. Okay, there we go. So my name's Jennifer Burton, and I'm a nurse practitioner with VON's Chronic Pain Program. So I'm in the Windsor area. I see clients as a nurse practitioner, and I manage the program as well. If you could advance the slide. So sincere thanks to the City of Kawartha Lakes for your support over the years and for giving this opportunity to share with you our successes and potential opportunities for future endeavors. So as I mentioned, Sherry sends her most sincere regrets. Unfortunately, she had a last-minute unavoidable appointment, and she's thanking me for filling in last minute. Next slide, please. So I'll present to you an overview of the VON nurse practitioner clinics and outline some of the benefits of these clinics to our communities. I'll illustrate some of the demand for service, which has already been explained previously, but I'll elaborate a little bit, and I'll highlight some opportunities for future growth. Next slide. So just a little background, nurse practitioners are registered nurses with a master's degree and a graduate certificate in primary health care. We have autonomy to assess, diagnose, and manage minor illnesses, chronic disease. And we have a strong emphasis on prevention and health promotion. VON is unique in that it's the only Ontario home care agency who provides primary health care, utilizing the full scope of the NP practice. As well, we are the only community-based employer with a dedicated nurse practitioner director, which is Sherry Comerford. We offer primary health care to over 10,000 Ontarians across the province. We have several NP clinics. We have 3 who are funded by Ontario Health, one of which is the chronic pain program, which is here in Windsor, Essex, and 9 that are funded by the Ministry of Health. Our VON NPs utilize a people-centered approach to guide treatment plans, empowering clients in shared decision-making. Next slide. So some of the benefits of nurse practitioners, we've demonstrated that NP clinics do enhance access to primary care within the province. We see that in September 2022, there was 1.8 million Ontarians without primary health care. And it was just to note that these published numbers of unattached patients often do not include patients who are registered to an NP, just with the difference in rostering with physicians versus registering with NPs. NPs do provide comprehensive primary care services, working to stabilize chronic diseases in order to reduce ER visits, hospital visits, and 911 calls. And this can be in the way of managing diabetes, COPD, and mental health. We often care for highly complex individuals, taking a comprehensive approach to people as a whole with our nursing backgrounds and considering social determinants of health and care plans. Next slide. So to demonstrate some of the benefits of our VON nurse practitioner clinics, we've looked at our client satisfaction surveys, and it shows us that 98%, we have a 98% rating of either very good to excellence when it comes to providing service and care. And 98% of clients would recommend VON NP clinic to their friends or family. VON employs 18 nurse practitioners across the province. 2 have been with the organization for over 20 years, 1 over 8 years, and 10 of them over 5 years, myself included, showing evidence of excellent retention, leading to greater continuity of care for clients. We're currently providing care to complex, high-needs clients who are often marginalized and would otherwise be without primary care. Our organization offers online appointment booking, as well as same-day and next-day appointments. And one of our priorities is preventative screening, assessing risk of falls in our seniors, conducting cervical and colorectal cancer screening per the guidelines, and screening for prevention or depression in order to implement early interventions. Next slide. Looking through a wider lens, provincially, our VON clinics are located all over the province, and our electronic medical record virtually connects us so that we have ability to provide remote coverage for our NP and our medical secretary colleagues as needed. We also have the ability to consult with each other, with those with expertise in specific fields. That being our chronic pain program, we often have a deeper understanding of substance use disorder as well. We have diabetes educator in Kirkfield. We have a unique program in North Bay, providing pediatric services in partnership with Children's Aid. We have nurse practitioners specializing in palliative care, lactation consultants, as well as others. We also provide home visits and virtual visits by phone or video, increasing access to seniors and individuals with mobility issues. Next slide. So just to expand on some of the scope and services of our nurse practitioners, we do provide comprehensive holistic care across the lifespan, including well baby and child checkups and immunizations, mental health assessment and management. We're linking clients to services within their communities. We're managing chronic diseases, including chronic pain, offering primary prevention care, prenatal care, referring to specialists, providing preventative care and cancer screening, and completing forms such as ODSB applications, WSIB forms, system navigation, and advocating for our clients in need, as well as doing influenza and immunization clinics. Next slide. So a little bit more locally, our Kirkfield NP clinic is staffed by one nurse practitioner who's been with VON for just over 5 years and a medical secretary who's been there for 12. They have 618 clients registered to their clinic. They had a total of 2,088 visits last fiscal year, and this was a combination of in-person, phone, and video visits. Their client received 6 to 10 calls per week requesting registration. This is a high needs area with reduced primary care providers. This clinic's intent on helping the community gain access to primary care, and as such, they've registered 160 new clients just in the past year. And just to note that each new intake does generate significant work. The clinic also provides on-site phlebotomy or blood lab, which also is a significant perk to registered clients who would otherwise have to travel for blood work. Next slide. And then looking at our Lindsay clinic, we have a new nurse practitioner that joined VON, Kristen Martins. She started in September of 2022. And since that time, she's had 227 visits with clients as a meet and greet to establish rapport with existing clients in the clinic. They have a total of 450 registered clients, and they had 1,026 visits last fiscal. And this was a combination, again, of in-person, phone, and video. This clinic receives about 20 calls a week requesting registration. And they are projecting to take on an additional 200 clients in this next upcoming fiscal, and additional 100 in the following. Kristen and Ashley that you see there, the medical secretary, they're working diligently currently to connect with existing clients and discharge those who have primary care elsewhere in order to increase capacity for new clients. So far, 97 clients have been discharged, mainly being that they've accessed primary care elsewhere. Next slide. So future state and opportunities in Lindsay. Thinking about the addition of another NP in the Lindsay clinic to accompany Kristen, this would be in the existing clinic space with the admin support that they have currently. Would provide an opportunity to partner with paramedicine for unattached patients, whereby they can directly refer these clients who are unattached to VON nurse practitioner for primary care. The nurse practitioner has the opportunity to provide care where it's needed, whether it be in the home or in the office. It's also an opportunity here to provide in-home support to seniors who are waiting for long-term care placement, as well as acting as a bridge to other permanent primary care providers locally. Next slide. Looking in Kirkfield, future opportunities with the addition of a second nurse practitioner, this NP could take on an additional 800 new clients, potentially filling some gaps in primary care. There's an opportunity here for a hybrid model, seeing those who are precariously housed and marginalized. They also have a new space that they'll be moving into in the very near future. And the space is more than adequate to take on an additional NP and the medical secretary to support. Next slide. Looking from a broader lens, implementing specialized programs across the provinces, looking at some of the examples that we have in other regions. So such as the chronic pain program. Here in Windsor, our chronic pain program provides services to Windsor, Essex, Chatham, Kent, and Sarnia-Lambton. We take referrals from primary care and other community agencies for patients who have chronic pain, and we provide assessments and we make recommendations for chronic pain management, opioid management. We also employ social workers who do one-on-one counseling support and virtual chronic pain groups. Ideas like this, our processes are in place. There's a great opportunity for VON to implement these programs in other province or in other municipalities across the province with the aid of additional funds. Looking at the Children's Aid partnership in North Bay, this clinic is housed in Children's Aid building, and they're able to provide, primary care to unattached children involved with CAS as well as their families. These families often have some trauma, mental health, and addictions challenges, and access to primary care often improves outcomes for family and children. VON is also creating a multidisciplinary hub across Ontario with an idea of providing sort of a one-stop shop to Ontarians, whereby an NP providing primary care, RNs, PSWs, adult day services, seniors exercise programs, social work, and hospice services. So these are some of these specialized programs that are existing that we have opportunity to spread throughout the province as well. Next slide, please. So when looking at the local opportunities with additional NPs, adding an additional NP to an existing clinic, we're looking at an additional $145,000. This would cover the salary and benefits of a nurse practitioner, with an additional approximate $5,000 for overhead, including medical supplies and travel for home visits. This does require lobbying from our funders, looking at municipalities, the Ministry of Health, as well as Ontario Health. We've even been keen to request funding for 1 year as a pilot project. And then within this 1 year, we would be able to demonstrate, provide some data on number of clients served. We can also look at reduced ER visits locally, 911 calls, etc. Next slide. So that's the end of the presentation. I'd like to thank you all for having us on behalf of VON and Sherry Comerford in particular. And I can try to field some questions, but if I'm not equipped to answer, I will pass them along to Sherry. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Yeo.
Hello, and thank you for filling in today. I have one very general question. Of the $145,000 for a new nurse practitioner in Kirkfield, say, what percentage of that is covered by the province and what percentage is generally applied to the municipality?
Historically, the funding has come from the Ministry of Health or Ontario Health. I'd have to ask particulars with Sherry around the municipal funding structure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Joyce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And through you, in my past business life, I had a relationship with the Daphne Cockrell School of Nursing, so I'm quite familiar with nurse practitioners. And I was always told that nurse practitioners can more or less look after 80% of your patient's primary care needs. Is that still the case around that 80%? More or less?
I would say, sorry?
Is that still, this is going back several years, so is that still the case that nurse practitioners can look after more or less 80% of a patient's needs? 20% have to be referred to a family doctor? Roundabout.
No, so in the last few years, the College of Nurses has expanded our scope. So we are now able to prescribe all medications, including controlled drugs and substances. And in this past year, they've opened our scope to order CT scans and MRIs. So we can provide primary care support in 100% capacity. We do have physicians that we consult with, but that's still evolving as well, I would say.
Thank you. The reason I brought that, if we can get more nurse practitioners, of course, have the province pay for it, it would go a long way to helping our primary care needs for our population.
Thank you.
I agree.
Cheryl?
Yes, if I may, I just wanted to reply to Councillor Yo's question about the funding model. So there's various funding models that can fund nurse practitioners across the province. And as I forgot your name, Jennifer has brought forward on Sherry's behalf, testing them as pilot is always a great way to set the case and then to bring it forward to the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care to prove and demonstrate the outcomes. So the nurse practitioner that comes out of the human services budget right now, just for instance, we pay $108,000 approximately for the nurse practitioner, and the rest comes from the provincial funding so $37,000 comes from the provincial ministry funding. So that's how that arrangement has worked for right now, but there's various ways you can slice and dice it. And as Jennifer has brought forward, Sherry Comerford and myself have been talking about the opportunity, as I had said earlier this morning, bridging healthcare with social and human services is a huge gap, and the opportunity to bring more nurse practitioners in to meet some of our vulnerable population needs would be a great opportunity. So again, lots to explore, and the funding model is kind of an open source for opportunity.
Yeah, thank you for that, and really kind of exciting too to hear maybe a tie-in with paramedicine as well there, because that sounds awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. I just have one thing I noted. I wondered how closely you worked with the public health units, because I note some of your scope and services, for instance, well baby child checkups and immunization. The health unit has something called Healthy Babies that they do as a program, and also immunization and influenza clinics are something that the health unit certainly, I don't think they put them on anymore, but they provide the media for the vaccines.
Yes, I can't speak in particular to Kawartha Lakes. In Windsor-Essex, though, however, our NP clinic works closely with public health, and like you said, it does advertise when our clinics are doing influenza clinics. They were doing COVID immunization clinics as well. I think it depends locally. I would have to pass that on to Sherry for more details, Mr. Mayor.
That's fine. I just look at duplication and wonder, can they be combined so that one or the other does it, and perhaps the monies can go elsewhere. So thank you.
Certainly. Mm-hmm.
I don't see any more questions, so thank you for your presentation today, and great work, and we need more nurse practitioners, that's for sure, and more healthcare professionals to meet the needs of our population. So thanks for what you do, and thank you for pitching in today. We appreciate it. Have a great day.
Thank you kindly. Take care.
Bye. Can I have a motion to receive the presentation? Councillor Yeo, Councillor Joyce, all in favor, and that's passed. We did it. Confirming bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the special meeting of council of January 26, 2023. Councillor Perry, seconder, Councillor McDonald, all in favor, that's passed. Motion to adjourn, Councillor Yeo, Councillor Smeaton, all in favor, thank you. Our next meeting is Tuesday, 1 o'clock, and it's a full-blown council meeting. Yeah.